Well, let me ask you this. Some of you are in 7th grade, right? 7th graders, where are you at? You're not in 7th grade, Colby. Did you raise your hand?
I did.
All right. Do you teach?
There for 14 years.
There you go. Yeah, they're like, you need to stay. And what about freshmen? You got any freshmen here? Freshmen, there we go. All right, cool. So there is this point in junior high or in high school or whatever where it's like the first day like either as a 7th grader, it's the first day as a freshman, you're going to a new school, new place, that kind of thing. Or maybe if you move to a new place, like if you came to Stephenville from somewhere else, or you've moved somewhere else before, and it's your first day, and there's a lot of anticipation for what's to come because it's like the beginning of a new thing. And there's like a little bit of excitement, but maybe a lot of like anxiety and fear in that. Right, but it's this new thing, it's this crazy thing, and you just kind of like this is a big deal. This is a point that I'm going to remember. It's the beginning of new things. Maybe you might call that like a turning point, right? And that's kind of something that we're going to talk about tonight. Is this idea of turning points, and sometimes in these turning points they're good, sometimes they're not so good, sometimes they're awful, right? And turning points are things in our faith where or just in life in general, where we go, hey, this is not how I expected this to go, and I'm going to be really challenged at this. So some examples of some turning points, maybe like a good turning point would be like, oh, I made that team that I didn't think I would make, right? Or like I made the basketball team, or I made the volleyball team or whatever. Or maybe like, you like that person you had a crush on and then you start a relationship with somebody. Or like, hey, today I didn't hit my little brother, right? These are good turning points, okay? But that's kind of a joke. But here's the thing. Also, there's like negative things, right? Like, hey, I tore my ACL and I'm missing the rest of the season, right? And we know people like that, and that's a rough time. Or it could be any number of things, right? It could be, hey, I was in this relationship, and then that relationship ended, and it wasn't pretty, right? Or it could be, my parents are going through a rough patch. My parents got a divorce. Or it could be this thing, like I had this part-time job, and then that job, like I got fired from that job, right? Or maybe you have to move, right? And you're like, no, I really like where I live. I don't really want to. All these things that can happen in our lives. Amy's going to bring up a whiteboard. I just kind of caught her out of nowhere with that one. But here, she's going to bring up this whiteboard for me. And I want to kind of explain kind of how this works, okay? No, this is going to be real. Thank you so much. This is going to be a real technical thing. But let's say that like this. Here, how do teachers do it? Is it like you do this and then everyone sees?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm like, Shay? All right. So like this is life, right? And so you have this like straight path, and maybe like we really wish this would be how life goes, right? It's really easy, real simple, just like point A, point B, we get there. But a lot of times life goes like this, like we're going, and then like this really great thing happens, and we're going forward, we're going on our plan, but then something awful happens, and we start like turning away from like our destination, and then like maybe we work our way back, and then maybe something really bad happens, and you kind of go back this way, like we're talking about, like maybe a relationship that you broke up, and that was really devastating to you. Or maybe like, hey, I made the team and I'm going forward. Or like I got a really bad grade on that test that I thought I was going to do really good, so I'm going backwards. And then maybe like things are starting to go better. And then like, oh, something really bad happened in my family, and maybe you're taking some steps back. And like life kind of doesn't go in this straight line. That kind of looks like a globe. I didn't really mean to. I don't know what that. Anyway, so, but the point is that life, a lot more of the time, looks like this second line than it does the first line. We don't always go from point A to point B without any kind of setbacks. A lot of times in life, we have these setbacks and things that take us away from where we want to head, right? And so, and these are turning points in our faith, turning points in our life. Now, you may be sitting here, if you're a high schooler, you might be thinking, yeah, I've experienced some of these turning points. I've experienced some of these. Maybe even as a junior higher, you're going, yeah, I can identify with some of those. And maybe you've kind of lived that life where you're like, I haven't really experienced a ton, but like my life's not perfect. There's certainly those turning points I can kind of identify. Everybody has turning points in their life, or they will at some point. You'll have points in your life where things are not going to go as you expect, and you kind of have to navigate through those times. I'm going to pull this off here, put this to the side. So, in that, we're talking about these turning points and how this affects our faith. Because sometimes what can happen is we get in this situation where we get in a turning point, where we get in like something really awful happens to us or around us or to our family or the people that we know, and it derails our faith, or it derails our life of some kind, right? And so what we're talking about is that these turning points, they're going to happen to you. They will happen to you. Things will happen in your life, but it's not necessarily how you, the turning point happens to you. It's how you work through those turning points, and actually that those turning points can be beneficial to your spiritual growth, to your faith. Now, we're going to look at a story today found in John chapter 11. So you have your Bible, flip there. We're in John chapter 11. And this is a good example of a turning point that happened in the life of Martha and her brother Lazarus, but more to Martha. So if you don't know this story, this is written by a guy named John. He was a disciple of Christ, and he wrote a gospel. His gospel is called the Gospel of John, or just John. And he's writing about the accounts of Jesus' ministry, and he tells this account that happened where a guy named Lazarus, who is the brother of Martha, was very sick. And this is where we pick up on our story. So it says, now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. So Mary, Martha, and Lazarus all related, all siblings. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. So this person, so Lazarus obviously has a close connection to Jesus, because they don't even say his name. It just says, Lord, the one that you love is sick. So just by that, Jesus knew it's Lazarus. Now, they say this because they're like, hey, Jesus, we want you to come. We know you can heal him. Come and heal him. We've seen you do great things. Please come and do this. So if you've known this story before, or if you don't, either way, it's fine. I'm going to let you in. Jesus waits a few days and then goes to see Lazarus. Now, this is interesting because if somebody says, hey, this dude's really sick, like if somebody came to you and say, hey, your family member, they're really sick, and we're not sure they're going to make it, what do? You go see them, right? You drop everything and you say, hey, we're getting, like if they live cross country, doesn't matter, we're getting a flight, we're going to go see them because we don't know if we're going to see them again. Then that can be a pretty big turning point in someone's life. Maybe you've actually experienced that. Maybe you've been in a situation where a family member was on their deathbed and you go, hey, we don't know. They may only have days or hours, so we need to go see them as quickly as possible. And that's the message that Mary and Martha are saying to Jesus. But Jesus waits around a few days. Very interesting, right? And it's not, you wouldn't think, you'd think, this is Jesus, this is someone he loves, the guy he's going to go, he's going to drop it, and he's going to see them. But no, Jesus listen, he has his plan, he has his timing, there's a reason for everything, and he goes, it's not a rush. But he dies. Before Jesus can get there, he dies. And it's not just like Jesus just missed him, like he was buried and in the ground, like in a tomb for multiple days by the time Jesus gets there. And if this were you, right, think about this. If you were Mary or Martha, you got to be thinking, what is going on? Like, we told Jesus, why couldn't he come and help Lazarus? Why couldn't he help our brother? But this is a big turning point. And in this situation, they're probably thinking, what? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. But they still love and trust Jesus through all this. And we'll see as we read what that looks like. It's not easy, but here's what it looks like. Verse 21 says this, Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. So let's look at that for just a second. Martha says, hey, if you would have been here, he would not be dead. Right? And I don't know why you did that. But even in that, I still trust you, and the Lord will give you whatever you want. Whatever you want to do, Jesus, I know the Lord's going to go. Like, I don't get it. I'm hurting right now. I'm in pain because my brother's dead. But if you, I still trust you. And in this, we can see that this turning point moment for Martha, her attention has been grabbed. And when turning points happen, and when we say this, we mean like things that are out of the ordinary, unexpected, or things that are devastating, whatever they are. In these moments, right, they get your attention. These turning points in your life, and they will happen, will get your attention. These turning points can get your attention. And they can and in that moment, you can either go, hey, like, I need to lean into what God is doing, or lean into what Jesus is trying to do in my life, or am I just going to like fall into like nothing, just like, hey, like it's bad and it only gets worse, right? Am I leaning in to am I looking for what God is doing? Am I looking for God, or am I just saying, hey, God doesn't care, he's not there. He doesn't love me. Because these turning points are going to happen. And in these turning points, what we want you to see is that God is there. Because we can see Martha as the example. She doesn't understand why Jesus didn't come, but she still trusts in the Lord. She still trusts in Jesus. And we're going to jump down or continue to verse 23. It says this. So that was 21. Now we're in verse 23. It says, Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Right? Your brother will rise again. And Martha answers, I know he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Right? So she's thinking, yeah, I know he's going to rise again because you said there will be a resurrection of the dead. Right? Jesus has preached about the resurrection of the dead, saying like at the end, like all believers will be resurrected. Right? This is what Jesus is teaching. Like he's taught this in other places. And so Martha gets it. Martha understands, and so Jesus says, he will rise again, and she's thinking, yeah, I know that, you've taught that. But Jesus is talking about something else. He's talking about both. He's talking about that, and he's talking about what he's about to do. Verse 25, it says, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Asking Martha. And Martha says, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. So here, in this moment, we see that Martha is trusting in Jesus. In this turning point, and Jesus is kind of pushing at her, right? It's like, hey, don't you trust me? Like, you know that the resurrection, the resurrection at the end of the days, it's going to come. He will rise again. And she goes, yeah, I know you've taught about that. I believe in you. I trust in you. And Jesus is kind of hinting, right, double hints, like, I'm going to raise, spoiler, I'm going to raise him from the dead. But also, at the end of the age, I'm going to resurrect everybody who believes. Right? And so this is a big statement, and Martha's in this turning point, and she says, hey, even though I don't understand this right now, I'm still trusting you. And so in our lives, okay, in our turning points, when things seem crazy, just know that we can still trust God in those crazy turning points. So here's verse 35. We're going to skip to verse 35, and this is what it says. The shortest verse in the Bible. Some of you have memorized this. Jesus wept. Jesus wept. So at this point, we fast forward a little bit, like Jesus is acknowledging, yes, Lazarus is dead. And in this moment, because they were friends, because he loved him, he cried. You see, he cried with Mary and Martha. In this turning point, stressful, super depressing, sad, anguishing moment, Jesus was with them and wept with them. That in your crazy turning point moments of your life, Jesus is with you. And he cares about the things that you're going through. Jesus weeps with his followers when they weep. So when you're in these crazy turning points, know that Jesus is with you. He's weeping with you. And then it says in this verse 36, the next verse is, so Jesus wept. Then the Jews, so just the Jewish people that were around, who were gathered at Mary's house, said, see how he loved him. Everyone could tell how much he loved Lazarus. And this is one thing we want to point out, that Jesus gets our pain. Right? Jesus gets our pain. He gets your pain. He understands my pain. He understands your parents' pain. He understands your friends' pain. He understands everybody's pain. See, this is what's so great about serving Jesus and following Jesus, that we serve a God who cares about us. We serve a God who loves us and who wants to know us intimately. And so, we can know this, because he gets our pain, we can also know this, that when a turning point gets our attention, we will always find Jesus in the middle with us. When a turning point gets our attention, like Martha, like Mary, this turning point, Lazarus dies, they thought Jesus was going to be there. And in that moment, it got their attention, but where was Jesus? Right there with them. In the middle of it, with them. So when you have these moments, right, where you have these turning point moments, where you're just doing something crazy happens, and you just do you're just going all the way back, and you're railing, and you don't know what's going on in your life, Jesus is right there with you. Jesus has not left you. He's in the middle of that turning point with you. God does not leave us. God does not abandon us. He doesn't just say, hey, you got in this mess, figure it out yourself. No. He was in the middle of it with Mary and Martha, and he's in the middle of it in your life too. Verse 37 says this, but some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? So they asked the obvious question. They're like, this Jesus who's done all these miracles, couldn't he have saved him? Couldn't he have brought him back to health? Couldn't he have kept him from dying? And I think we all could ask that question too. We're like, why didn't Jesus do this? Right? Because Jesus doesn't always do the miracle. It's miraculous because it doesn't always happen. Right? But also in this story, I think he's making the point to know that he's with us even in life and in death. That nothing is bigger than Jesus. Nothing separates us from him being in the middle with us. So now we're going to skip down to verse 41. But as we do that, what's happened is now Jesus has asked Mary and Martha, like, hey, show me the tomb. And you know what? Let's move away that stone. Let's bring his body out. And they're probably thinking, he's stinky right now. He's been dead for a few days. Why do you want to see this body? Martha might have even thought in the back of her mind, he's going to do something. I mean, with all this talk about resurrection and he will rise, she might have thought that he's going to do something. But here's what it says in verse 41. Verse 1 says, "So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, 'Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I know that you are always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me.'" Isn't that interesting? Jesus thanks the Father for hearing him and says, I know you hear me, but I do it for everyone else's benefit. God always hears you. He always hears your prayer, even in the middle of these crazy turning point moments. He hears you, he's with you, and he wants you to know it's for your benefit that he said this right here. In verse 33 it says, "When he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, 'Lazarus, come out. Lazarus, come out.'" He's dead. Why would he, right, what? Okay, Jesus. Yeah, we get it. Okay, yeah. This is weird. "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, right? That's the next line. "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and with strips of linen, the cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." He's not dead, right? Jesus raised him from the dead, like he said he would. And then verse 45, this kind of wrap up our scripture here, but it says this: "Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him." Because of this event, many people who did not believe Jesus was who he said he was before this, because of this, now believed. Now, it is interesting that people came to belief in Jesus because of a turning point that happened in Martha's life. The bad thing that happened to Martha, the thing that devastated her, the thing that she didn't understand, that set her back, is now the thing that God is using to bring people to faith in him. And so these turning points that we have, these hard things that happen in our life, right, do not have to go to waste. Do not have to be in vain. These turning points that happen can actually grow our faith. Mary and Martha's faith after this event, unshakable. They had a setback, but because of this, because they found Jesus in the middle of their chaos and they trusted in him, their faith was unshakable to the end. And so in your life, when you have moments of chaos and setback and things that are these turning points where you could go, hey, it could go really bad, or maybe it'll start getting back on the right spot. When these things happen in your life, remember that Jesus is always there. He has not left you. And in fact, they can use this trial, this chaos, this turning point to actually strengthen your faith. And this is a way, this is a test, whether you have a counterfeit faith or whether you have a real faith. When trials come, is your faith gonna carry you through it? Not that it's easy, not that it's not hard, not that there's not anguish, but is your faith going to see you through, or is your faith just a false one? Right? Now, Jesus carries us through. Your faith is all in Jesus. It's not about what you can do, right? But you have this faith in Jesus, and Jesus carries you through, right? So, here is one thing I want us to see is that it's possible to go through the toughest pain possible and come through it trusting God more. It's possible to go through the toughest pain possible and come through trusting God even more than you did before. You don't have to live very long and trust in Jesus to realize this. You do not have to be that old before you start to realize that growing in your faith often requires some suffering. In fact, Jesus promises it. He says, you will suffer for me. It says, do not be surprised when this happens. And so, but it is possible to grow through that. These toughest situations, it's possible to grow through that pain when we're trusting in God. So a couple things to ask yourselves as we wrap up here, as we come to the end. The first thing is this: where is God in this? In your life, right? Let me just get real with you for a second. You may be going through a really rough time right now. And maybe other people don't know about it. Maybe other people don't feel it around you. And you need to ask, where is God in this? Because sometimes we are in tough situations and we don't even think about what God is doing in our lives. We just think about the pain. Now maybe you're going, hey, I'm not at one of these turning point moments right now. Things are okay. Right? Things are fine. I really haven't had anything crazy happen to me lately. It will come. It will come. I had a professor who once said to me, he said, you're either in the middle of a trial, coming out of a trial, or about to go into one. That actually life, this is life. This here is life, and this is a fantasy. That that Jesus doesn't promise this. He promises this. And so you may be thinking, I'm not in a trial right now. It's coming. That's not meant to scare you. That's just saying, hey, heads up. There's going to be these turning point moments. And when that happens, where is God? I don't say, that's not a question of like, is God not there for you? No, the question is, are you looking for God? Are you looking for what He's doing in your life when you're in these turning point chaotic moments? So that's a question to ask yourself. Look for it. Ask other people, hey, ask someone you trust, someone who's who like maybe your small group leader or another friend who's a follower of Jesus, or a parent or somebody, and go, hey, like, I'm in this moment. It's really rough. How do I see God in these moments of chaos? Sometimes it takes people to speak into your life about this. I know times in my life I've needed other people to speak into my life and say, hey, you don't see it right now, but there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Right? And in those moments, you got to ask, where is God? How can I find it? Where do I find that hope that comes through Jesus? Because Martha was looking for it. She said, I don't know why you did this, but I trust you. And the second question that you need to ask is this, is how can this tough situation help my faith grow? Right? How can I grow? How can I learn? What can God show me through this? How can I grow through this tough situation? How can this tough situation help my faith grow? And you really have to ask the first question to then ask the second question. Right? Because God is there. He's wanting to work in your life always, every situation. He's in the middle of it, and He's wanting to help you. Where is God in this? And then how can He help me? How can God help me grow through this tough situation? How can my faith grow even when I feel like I'm moving backwards? And these are questions that you should not ask alone. Maybe this is the same kind of thing. Find other people and ask them ask these questions to them. How can this tough situation help me grow in my faith? And this is we're all building up to this point, and this is our bottom line. This is the big thing I want you to take away. These two questions are huge. If you hadn't written them down, you can write them down. But here's our bottom line. Here's our main point. God can use turning points to grow our faith. And that should be obvious by now. But God can use these turning points in our life to actually grow our faith. In these chaotic, anxious, painful, rough turning points, God can actually use them to grow our faith. And so, as we wrap up tonight and we come to a conclusion and all that kind of stuff, I do want to mention that we have something. Actually, Amy, can you go to the back wall back there and hold up the paper now? So we actually have something that you can take home. And this might help you. There you go. We'll just leave them back there. They can get them as they go. But these papers right here, it's what does it say? My faith journey, right? So this thing here is a take-home paper, not required. It is a little homework, but I think it'll be worth your time. You take this home, and it focuses on two different things, okay? The first thing that it focuses on is whether or not, like, it's looking at your relationships. Not like boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, but it's talking, like we talked about week 2, do y'all remember? That we are not meant to do this faith on our own. It is a personal faith, but it's a personal faith amongst the community. So key relationships in your spiritual development. That's what the first section is about. And the second section is about turning points that we just talked about. So in this series, we've talked about key relationships, we've talked about turning points, and this will help you walk through, and you'll actually make a timeline of your faith journey right there, and you can start to see, how has God been with me in these tough times? And you'll start to think about it, process this, that kind of thing. Take this home. They're back there. We got plenty. Grab one on your way out. We also have those devotionals. But this week, think about this, because this is the deal. You're going to face these turning points. And when you do, are you going to ask the questions, where is God in this? And is he, how can he use this? How can he use this pain to grow my faith? What can God do to use this to grow my faith in him? So that's where we're at. Grab one of these.